guys, my name's Gemma and I want to help you improve your art. If it's your first time here, don't forget to click the subscribe and the notify bell so you never miss a tutorial. Today I'm going to draw 6 different skin tones so you can see not only the sort of colours I use for skin tones, but how I go about making skin nice and smooth with Polychromos. So let's just crack on, and I'm going to start by showing you an extremely pale skin tone. So the first thing I'm going to do, which is going to be the same for all 6 skin tones, is put down a solid base of Ivory. As a general rule, whatever I'm drawing with colour pencils, I like to start at my lightest colour, work my way down to my darkest colour, and then work my way back up to the lightest. And I find that Ivory works well for most skin types just as a base to take away that white layer of paper. Now I'm using the side of the pencil rather than the tip and working in tiny little circular motions rather than scribbling back and forth. And that's creating a much smoother, more consistent base that I can work off. And now I'm going to move on to using the light flesh colour. Light flesh on its own is a very pink, it's a light pink, and I think for skin, if you didn't mix it with other colours, it would just look peculiar because it's so pink. But it is an important part when mixed with these other colours. So I'm going to put this over the top of the Ivory quite lightly and still working in the same way that I did with the Ivory, working with the side of the pencil in little circular motions. I'm doing the vast majority of the circle, but I am leaving a little patch light just because I want there to be an area of light on the swatch at the end when I'm done. I would highly recommend, if you're drawing a portrait, to select the colours that you think are appropriate for the person you're drawing and then create a little swatch like this. It will save you a lot of wasted time if it turns out that the colours you've selected aren't quite right and you want to change them. You don't want to end up drawing a whole portrait and then frustrated that you think you should have used different colours. If you want to see how I go about picking colours for drawings, I do have a video for that which I will link in the description, which shows you how to create swatches and select colours. So now I'm going to add some lightish grey. This might seem a surprising colour, but when you really look at skin tones, particularly cooler skin tones, there is frequently grey in the shadowed areas. And as I want the bottom right of this swatch to be the shadowed area, I'm going to add primarily this grey to that bottom right hand half. I am still going to use it very lightly though. Now on top of that grey, I'm going to use cinnamon. Cinnamon is one of my go-to colours for skin tones, particularly lighter skin tones. It's kind of an earthy pink and it just layers up really nicely with the other skin colours. So I'm going to pop that on top of the grey, particularly in that bottom right hand part, and then I'm going to move on to the darkest shadow bit, which is a slightly darker grey. And you can see when I do the grey, I start quite light, and then because I'm starting to get towards the second pass and go back from dark to light, I'm going to start pressing a bit harder, but by no means full pressure. So now I'm going to work back down, going back over all of these colours. So every time I move on to the next colour, I completely go over the previous colour. And I find that this blends all the colours together really nicely and creates a smooth, graduated look. Okay, and that's skin tone number 1. So I'm going to move on to a much warmer light skin tone now. And as I said before, starting in exactly the same way, I'm going to put down a base of Ivory and I'm going to put light flesh on top of it again. And you'll start to see as I go through these skin colours that using similar colour pencils each time, but doing different pressure in different places can create completely different skin tones. Now I'm still going to use the cinnamon here to grow those pinky kind of tones. And then I'm going to use a Bistre, which is quite a light brown, which I can start to use to fade towards my shadows. Bistre I find blends very well into cinnamon, and I find this really helps with warming up the skin tone. And then as the darkest value, I'm going to use Walnut Brown. And you can see as I work back through these colours and build it up, how it's creating a much warmer, brighter skin colour. On to the next one, and I'm going to create more of a tanned kind of skin colour, but I'm actually only going to change one pencil from the previous swatch. I'm not going to be using light flesh, I'm going to change light flesh to use burnt ochre instead. Burnt ochre is kind of a mixture between brown and terracotta, I would say. So I'm removing that extra pink tone that I had in the previous swatch. But I am still getting some pinky tone from the cinnamon colour as I used in the last one. That's not to say that you need a pinky tone on every bit of skin that you're drawing. For thinner areas of skin, particularly the skin under the eyes, because it's so thin, you can see little hints of veins coming through, and as a result it looks a bit bluer. So under the eyes I would do similar colours, but I would probably hold back on the cinnamon a little bit and add maybe a bit of grey under there to give that illusion of blue. While I'm thinking about slightly different colours for different parts of the face, the next swatch I'm going to do is going to be a much redder kind of tone, which is particularly good when you think about cheeks and rosy cheeks. One of the colours I'm using here is Red Violet, which I find works very well for adding extra depth. Because it has that little kind of bluey tone to it, it cools down the cheeks a bit and stops them from being so garishly red. I also like using the burnt sienna here as the darkest colour because it is quite a reddy brown. I'm getting into some darker tones here, and you'll notice that the colours I'm using aren't dissimilar to the colours I used on the third swatch. All I've done is swap out the cinnamon for the light flesh, and I'm using a grey just to cool things down a little bit. But on the most part, you can see how a difference in the pressure that I'm using can create a completely different tone. I do find that generally with darker skin tones, if you add too much pink, it stops looking natural. That said, it does massively depend on the lighting of the person that you're drawing. So you have to look at the reference and select colours based on what you can actually see and not what you think should be there. The last swatch I'm going to draw is the darkest skin colour, and I'm actually going to go back to using some of the greys for this. The only colour I'm going to use with a red tinge is the burnt sienna, because as I said before, I find it's quite a reddish brown. But I'm going to use a couple of greys, the burnt sienna, and then I'm going to use the dark sepia for the very darkest tones, which is almost black but not. But I'm still sticking with the ivory for the lightest tones because I do find that generally skin tone has a yellowish kind of undertone. I hope that gives you an idea of the sort of colours I would use to draw skin tones with Polychromos. I'll pop all the colours I've used for this video in the description. If you found this video helpful, give it a like and don't forget to click the subscribe and the notify bell so you never miss an art tutorial. Happy drawing guys, I'll see you in the next one.